Stranger Things Season 4 Volume 1 has arrived, and I have finally finished the long and big first part of it all. I will be reviewing Volume 1 and going into what I liked and disliked about this first part of Season 4. No spoilers will be discussed, as I am sure many people have not fully watched it in its entirety. If you like this video, be sure to drop a like on the video and comment down below what you thought of Volume 1 Season 4. To get it out of the way, I love Season 4 so far. The show of Stranger Things is really proving why more and more by the season that it's one of the best television shows of all time and could end up being in the top echelon by its end after Season 5. This season feels almost more like the original season than either of the two seasons that came before it. And that's not to say that Season 2 and 3 aren't good, because they are very good, but Season 4 still so much is like a nostalgia trip back to that first season, which is still my personal favorite out of all the 4 seasons that we've gotten so far. All of our main cast returned from the previous seasons, from the kids, teen adults, and our older characters who get their own journey so far in the first volume. As a good segue into that, let's talk about those stories, because the way the season does it, it splits all our characters up into their own groups: Hawkins, California, and then Russia with our older adult characters. I love that this show does that, and at the same time I love that the show gives them all equal amounts of screen time to really flesh out each story. The one group that doesn't get it the most is the California group of Mike, Will, Jonathan, and a new character in Argyle. While I thought their storyline was fine, it definitely needs more, especially since they don't get any screen time at all in the very last episode of Volume 1. I also, for one, did not really get on board with the character of Argyle. While he has some funny lines and is only there for the comedic relief, I felt his character was a bit too much at times, and they kept nailing us on the head with his style of behavior. Our older adult characters in Murray, Joyce, and Hopper venture off into the cold and violent landscapes of Mother Russia. This storyline, in my opinion, was solid, and at some spots where I was a bit worried it would get too nonsensical, but it held up and got me to a point where I felt for these characters in every step of their journey, especially Hopper, who gets some of the most brutal punishment I've seen in a show in a very long time. The final episode of showing that storyline shows some of the most violent and brutal action yet on the show, and that's not a spoiler since it is in the trailer. I love every second of that, and I seriously cannot wait to see where it goes to end off Season 4. We also find ourselves following the massive storyline of our main characters back in Hawkins, who along with Eleven's storyline get the most screen time out of any of the characters. I loved everything to do with that particular story, especially all the social commentary on the life of these kids now that they are in high school and are growing older. As somebody who left high school not that many years ago, seeing all the scenes with that really brought back some memories of my own from the time when I was in high school. The characters, as always, prove themselves to be some of the most funny, entertaining, and fun characters to follow along in a show, and a lot of it very much does have to do with just how young they still are, even if the actors themselves, funny enough, are now around the same age as I am in real life. You just get such a massive and great sense of chemistry between them all, as if they were one with one another in real life all the time. And that is one of the best strengths that this show has ever had with itself, is the ability for these characters to bounce off one another and have a very good story to tell as they fight off the demons and monsters of the Upside Down. I will also mention I do like the introduction of another character in Eddie, who plays this really crazy and overly hyper leader of this D&D group that Dustin and Mike are a part of, and very much plays a huge role in this season, much more than I actually thought he would have. Following up with this, we now get into the story of Eleven, who after a few episodes begins to go on her own journey, and this here is where the show really starts to go back and present itself to bringing everything to the forefront. Without giving anything away, I will say I did find her story to be one of the most intriguing for sure, and make no mistake about it, Millie Bobby Brown is continuing to prove that she will be a generational talent to come in the entertainment industry, not just because of her massive following, but because she's just a great up-and-coming actor. Eleven doesn't have her powers anymore, and I think that offered up a really interesting way of telling her story, that what we hadn't seen in previous seasons where she did have them and could get her friends out of really sticky situations. Regarding the technical aspects of this show, I found all of it to be quite good in many cases. There were a few times where the CGI definitely didn't look the greatest, but then again, I do feel it works a lot in the places that it needs to. For example, there's a lot of CGI that has to do with bugs in this season, and all I will say is that you could clearly tell that it was fake and didn't look the greatest, but that's just a nitpick for something so small. The music as always is solid and some of the best music in television I think I've ever heard. Cinematography is maybe the best it's ever been in this series. The Duffer Brothers have such a great great style of shooting along with the great storytelling they bring. The directing all around from them as showrunners is evident enough, and I hope they get to do more stuff in the future once this show ends after season 5. If I had to offer up another thing that I would hope the show goes into more is more hypertension filled scenes that leave you wondering if something bad will happen to any of the main cast. And that's not really a spoiler, but in the end I do hope that the show gives some stakes to a higher conflict that could come from Volume 2 and Season 5 coming down the line. To also address another thing in this show is, of course, the villain, and this is the last thing that I will talk about before I leave off this review. It is really hard to discuss a lot of what's going on with the villain because that would involve me going into spoilers. I will say, though, I think the villain is definitely one of the more interesting villains because there's actually a much bigger story around this villain than I would say any of the other previous villains that we've had in the last 3 seasons that we've gotten. I think so far it is offering up to where maybe this villain could potentially offer itself to be maybe one of the best villains we've had in this show, or maybe the best villain that we've had in the show. And I'm really curious to see where they go with this character, especially with these last 2 episodes, because at the end of the day, as I've said already, season 5 is going to be the final season, and so far what they're doing with this villain, it hasn't really offered up any interpretation to say that he could or could not show up again in season 5, or if he is the main big bad of this entire series. I haven't really found any connection to say that that is going to be the case, but overall I would say the villain so far is giving me something left to want to think about, especially going into Volume 2 in July. So overall, I absolutely love this show right now, and it had me waiting 3 years. So, I mean, look, waiting 3 years, in my personal opinion, I think it was well worth it so far. Volume 2, of course, as I just said, is returning on July 1st, and so my hype and anticipation are killing me to want to go and watch those 2 really long episodes, both of which will be in movie length. Again, I want to know all your thoughts down below in the comments. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you are new and want to see more in the future. This is my first review on my new secondary channel. If you also want to go check out my primary channel, which will become a Call of Duty based channel, also do go check that out as well. Hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all in July for Volume 2.